In set number 6, we're going to talk about Truman's tough rhetoric. So you're going to tell what was the situation like in the Soviet Union after World War II. You're going to summarize what Truman created after World War II, and you're going to decide what the source is saying. Is the Cold War the U.S.'s fault or the Soviet Union's fault? Alright, so this is set number 6. This is Truman. We're going to see what it was like after World War II for him. With World War II at an end, by the end of summer 1945, the United States knew that the Soviet economy was in a state of near collapse. The Soviet Union had lost at least 20 million souls during the war alone, and perhaps another 20 to 30 million from Stalin's decade of purge trials. So they lost 20 million fighters, and this is how many people Stalin killed of his own people. Remember, Stalin killed more people than Hitler did. 30,000 factories and 40,000 miles of railroad tracks had been destroyed. All of the industrialization that Stalin had promised and delivered to his people with the 5-year plans had been lost. Truman realized this and remained confident that the United States was in a stronger bargaining position. He surmised that the Soviets had to come to the United States for much-needed economic aid. As early as January 1945, FDR had already denied the Soviet request for a $6 billion loan. Lend-Lease, remember we talked about that, proved no more effective. In the spring of 1945, Congress agreed that they would not allow Lend-Lease for any post-war reconstruction in Russia. This was obviously a major shift in policy for under the Lend-Lease Act of 1941. The United States had shipped enormous quantities of war material to the Soviets, including 14,000 planes, 7,000 tanks, 52,000 jeeps, and almost 400,000 trucks. So during the war, we were willing to lend the Soviets guns and materials, but we stopped after the war. We would no longer give them things afterward. So this is what Truman created. This is an excerpt from that paper or that speech that he gave. At the present moment in world history, nearly every nation must choose between alternative ways of life. The choice is too often not a free one. One way of life is based upon the will of the majority and is distinguished by free institutions, representative government, free elections, and guarantees of individual liberty, freedom of speech and religion, and freedom from political oppression. The second way of life is based upon a will of minority forcibly imposed upon the majority. It relies upon terror and oppression, a controlled press and radio, fixed elections, and the suppression of personal freedoms. I believe that it must be a policy of the United States to support free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressures. So that's pretty harsh. So this is what Truman was saying after World War II, and it was clearly attacking the Soviet Union's way of running their country. So it showed this is what the United States believes in. You know, this free institution, representative government, free elections. And then the second part, he's pretty much describing the Soviet Union and how Stalin was running his country.